not much longer of this world. I'm fed up. I don't want to deal with it. I'm letting you all know. I'm not putting blame on you, just letting you know. Be prepared. I may not be around in the near future. Strange. We've probably all seen this Pete Davidson tweet where he stated he was unhappy. He might not be in the world much longer. He's sick of the place. How often do we see those? How often don't we see those? Yet there's some repercussive action, like a suicide, a death, disappearance, some kind of violent act, or just a basic cry out. These tools have given us that capability where you're not alone anymore. Yet it's probably extremely lonely when you make a message or you present yourself like that. And for some weird reason, Pete Davidson's been in the limelight. Ariana Grande, of course. She seems to be one of your top social media and entertainment personnel, singers. She's got a great voice. Woo! When she was on Victorious, I knew she was going to blow up. A couple of those cats could have, but and then she hooked up with R&B and pop and probably some very tight people in the industry, and probably because she's from down here in West Palm. And if you go over to Palm Beach Island and you go over to, I think is it Singer Island? I don't know what it is, where Tiger Woods lives. It's one of the top, 20, 10, 5 richest zip codes in the country. All of the country. All of the contiguous states, anywhere. And it's because it's got there's 50 or 80 residences on this spit, this slice of land outside of mainland Florida with an intercoastal waterway in between. And there's probably 50 or 80 homes on it. Huge, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 square foot lots, these giant lots that they then build, mansions on, estates, right on the Atlantic Ocean. And a high number of those individuals are entertainment, record label, movie producers, things like that. And this is not I wouldn't say this is their main residence, this is their East Coast residence, but some of them are East Coast. Like somewhere down right around here, and it is Palm Beach Island, or Singer Island, or one of these islands. The cat that manages Miley Cyrus, there's a lot of those people down here. Ariana Grande came from here, right? And it's weird because they have auditions and stuff right down in West Palm. But it makes sense. There's a lot of individuals down here from New York. There's a lot of individuals down here with ties back up to New York, the entertainment industry, the fashion industry, the culture industry. Miami is a hotbed of culture. There are huge pockets of Jewish community down here. Jewish community is big in a lot of those components. So, of course, they have direct ties to the West Coast. And poor Pete Davidson, I don't know how, what, when, where, or why. That dude got caught up with her. That woman's a whirlwind. And he's a strange introvert with some kind of extrovert component for comedy. Self-deprecation, his hair's blue or red or pink or yellow. I mean, he's a strange egg. He's got some flavor of comedy, that slapstick knot style, more of the deadpan style where he does, like an update. But he seems like he's got a nervous, gregarious personality where he talks a lot and he's quirky. His physical, specimen, he's tall and skinny and tattooed, and I mean his face is, sucked in. He's definitely a different kind of dude, but a blend that's sort of common in today's young people. They're lean, they've got, differing attributes like ink all over their body, they color their hair, they wear different styles, they pierce shit. He falls into that emo goth style, and I've only seen a handful of his skits on Saturday Night Live. It seems funny, but he was a whirlwind in the news with her. She's just gonna blow through anything. I mean, all that is secondary to her singing. She is an epic voice, and that, as long as she's not dead, I think, and as long as she's not running down a path of destruction like Whitney or somebody with Bobby Brown, who also had perfect voice. And if you ever saw her early recordings, like in her religious and church recordings, just fabulous. Ariana Grande had a fabulous voice, but that's her bread and butter. All this other stuff is support. So Pete Davidson's just a support. He's like a media piece for the moment. And he got caught up in that and then discarded, and I don't know how he reacted. Apparently not well. And it seems that he's got a history of depression, and so he made this Twitter statement, and they sent, fans and people sent a wellness check on him in New York. Machine Gun Kelly, some kooky rapper dude out in the West Coast, jumped on a plane, man, coming to check on whatever these people do. And Ariana Grande apparently pinged him a bunch of times, wanted to check base with him, because her prior boyfriend, Mac Miller, one of these SoundCloud or whatever psychos, very similar to Pete Davidson in visibility, in view. Skinny dude, a lot of ink, trendy clothes. That guy was a rapper. He overdosed on Xanax bars or something. Well, like one of these kids nowadays that, they inhabit this space. Skills or no skills, or I don't know what. Seems like Eminem poo-pooed the SoundCloud rappers. And Triple X got killed down here in his little BMW 8. Got robbed because he had a bag of money, and Lil Bow Wow or Little, I don't know, overdosed, and you got Little Xanax, and these cats are popping all kinds of drugs and mumbling and drinking scissorp, like the kooky black dude with the dreads, Lil Wayne. Everybody's Lil Dave. Little Davey, Little DY, Little DY, and then I don't know. SoundCloud, but this thing zoomed back up to, mainstream media. And Ariana Grande tried to ping him a bunch of times, and he wouldn't respond to her. Of course he wouldn't respond to her. Get the fuck out of here. You're just a media whore and a great singer. Stick to being a great singer. That's the recipe anymore, though. Like the Kardashians. You create your own brand. You control your own visibility and role in the country. And you become a bazillionaire. You're like a deity. You're a god that walks around that the masses worship. Pretty weird. And then the congressman that he made fun of, the dude from Iraq, he's a war veteran who lost his eye. He's got this tweaked out eye patch. Remember the round one that the pirates used to wear? His is flat at the bottom so that it curves along your cheekbone. And then it's customed over here so that it slides into, your orbital. I mean, it's almost like a custom eye patch. I was like, ooh, kind of stepped up. But, instead of wearing, I guess, a prosthesis, a prosthetic eye, But that stares at you like Sammy Davis. Listen, baby, Sammy Davis Jr., baby. Hey, baby, and his eye never moves. It stays straight all the time. He looks over there, and the one eye stays straight. You'd think they'd have some kind of robotic prosthetic for your eye, which would be a little better. I don't know. That sounds kooky. Oof. It's not like you're gonna see Bionic Eye Steve Austin, a man barely alive. We can rebuild him. Oh, wouldn't that be awesome having a bionic eye? But this dude pinged the little turd and then visited him. And apparently he made fun of this guy on his Weekend Update, and he didn't make fun of him. He tied him into a joke on the Weekend Update with the other two idiots and said something like, yeah, he lost his eye or something and more, right? And then, that sort of blew up on social media like he was insensitive and blah, blah, blah. But I digress. This guy said, hey, let me come see you. And then he showed up on Saturday Night Live with him. And then this tweet went out, and this guy told him, hey, we all have a purpose. Stay the course. You seem like you're a talented young man. Gave him, a bunch of Tony Robbins stuff. A bunch of positive speech, which is good. And it has bearing, but only if you yourself hear it, right? We can't change ourselves. No one can change us and no one can fix us. We are the only ones that can change ourselves or fix ourselves. We are solely in charge of ourselves. Our behavior, our environment, our health, our welfare, all of our stability, mental, financial, physical, emotional, social, right? All that. We're responsible for that. And some impacts, internal and external impacts, change that. And it seems like Pete wasn't doing too well these days, but apparently, his friends and the people around him rallied, and he was back in the limelight, and he's in a better spot, I guess, out of his depression. I'm sure it's not the first time we'll see this. I don't think it was the first time we'd seen it. He's done this in the past. Maybe not to this extreme where it's just splashed across all the media pages. But it's strange how that works anymore, as opposed to someone who's distraught going to a family member or to a close friend or a personal acquaintance that is someone that's, meaningful to them and saying, I don't feel well, I'm unhappy. Or if they're showing those attributes, that person's saying to them, you don't seem well, you seem unhappy, you seem depressed, you seem distraught, you seem off. And then there's an action. That just didn't occur. Sort of strange. Mental health is, it has ups and downs for everyone. And some of those ups and some of those downs are much more severe. This isn't new. But you have to be aware, and you have to be, cognizant if it's yourself. And I've always been told that the person that's in depression is unaware, or is unable, or is not empowered to manage, change, bring themselves out of that depression. In many aspects. In some aspects, maybe they are. And I've had depression. I don't have severe depression, but I think every person has depression. Disappointment, depression. Multiple events that occur, and in a row, that are negative, that are impactful. And that's a part of life. Life is ups and downs, and a big part of life is struggle. Struggle is what defines us. And I don't know why I always feel that that's the case. I don't know. I don't know of anyone, or for myself, where it's simply been easy, and therefore you've never known struggle and what that type of life would be. But I think we all have some form of mental anguish and struggle, and it's quantified as an illness. I think an illness is anything that we see potentially impacts the lifespan of our species. That we can define, and then we can put causal factors and effect factors, and then prescribe some type of treatment. And subsequently we call that an illness. I don't think a lot of it is an illness. I think a lot of it is life. And it gets intermingled or it gets quantified as an illness. I think the drug manufacturers have completely embraced that and produced any type of drug. Huey Lewis in the News, man, I want a new drug. One that won't make me sleep, one that keep me up all night. But dude, we are a society of drugs. And drugs need to be prescribed for use to combat an illness. And mental illness is something that we can't grasp. It's not a broken finger, pain med, or, a clogged artery, stent, or any of that stuff. It's so much broader and, non-visible mental illness. Clearly, there are differing degrees of it, and clearly in this country, in any country, mental illness exists. I see the homeless people, the people on the streets that have real mental illness, often an offshoot of some other physical illness, a birth defect, or an infection, or some type of other problem that they encountered in their life. And they're no longer cognizant and able. They live, but they're not having social interactions and functioning properly in society as a contributing adult. To me, that's what I've always quantified as mental illness, but different cases. And I think with internal review, if you're cognizant and you actually take assessment of yourself in some type of regular interval, you can note the changes, you can see the changes, and then you have to have a plan to enact some type of interruption, modification, behavioral change, so that you don't continue in that path. I think that's an approach. I'm sure there are hormonal and chemical imbalances and changes and things of that nature that can occur in normal people, in their brain and their body, and they can inhibit normal mental function. But I don't think that's the case often, and I think it's used as an excuse often. And I think normal life, with the ups and downs that we have in our finances, our employment, our adult relationships, our marriages, our families, our offspring, our siblings, many of those are challenging. And it's easy to quantify things as, there's a mental problem. When in fact, it's probably an individual just doesn't have a tool in the toolkit to properly address it. And the people around them don't take steps to assist them in trying to discover that, or try to manage that for themselves, to fix it or change it themselves, because that's the only person that can do it. But yeah, it's strange how Pete Davidson has blown up in the social media these days. Suicide rates are up. We've seen that. I saw some of the numbers. 46,000 last year. Handguns used in a lot of them. Opioids and heroin and pills used in another handful. Accidental overdose suicides up. White males, I think white males, high suicide rate for handguns, 20,000, 26,000, something like that. Notable individuals, Robin Williams, of course, right? Kate Spade, strange one. Anthony Bourdain, known alcoholic. And then, the whole hashtag Me Too with his Italian girlfriend. And then what they uncovered with her and her relationships with minors. Whatever occurred, clearly it seemed to have an impact in his life. And then all these other people, Margot Kidder, right? Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane. She had drug and alcohol addiction. And all the rock stars, Chester Bennington and the guy from Audioslave, Chris Cornell, whatever. It seems like more and more people, which is unfortunate. I think, it seemed that a common message is that they had mental anxiety and mental illness issues throughout their lives. That's what everybody seems to lead to. Now, in some instances, it's shocking. Kate Spade, I don't know. I think she was personal into herself, but I don't know if many people thought that she would be suicidal and kill herself. And there's so many factors, like Robin Williams, he was ill. These football players that have traumatic brain injuries, Aaron Hernandez, who knew that he was going to be in the clink forever and had some very, very private pieces of his life that seemed to be coming out. Homosexuality, gang interactions, just a lot of strange stuff. Better to go away, hung himself, right? And I think some facet of those will always occur. And mental health, hopefully we will continue to understand the brain and we'll get better at trying to define what in fact is mental health, what in fact is depression, from a scientific manner with hormones and changes and how the neurons and the synapses fire and react. Your hippocampus, your the core of your brain, right? All the facets of your frontal lobe and behavior and learning and all those pieces that may or may not affect whatever that depression is and where that's housed. And then possible treatment. I don't know, maybe there shouldn't be treatment. Maybe depression is a normal piece of human emotion. And while we don't want to be depressed, it's something that our body, our brain uses for some type of method of healing or coping or existing. Can't always be happy, though we always say, I wish you happiness all the time. Strange. I don't want you to be sad. I don't want you to be depressed. But yeah, pretty strange stuff. And there's a lot of places that you can go and seek assistance or knowledge on mental health. The internet's loaded with pages and sites and factual information, scientific investigation on mental health, on depression. I'm sure there's a bell curve of information, some quacks and some experts, and you want to find something in between as to what and how it pertains to you. But yeah, it seems that there's more visibility on it, which is good nowadays. And we all have to be leery. We react, and we become callous like we do with war news or something of that nature, something that's always in our headlines, political news. And you query or proposition the general public and they don't even want to hear it anymore. I'm sick of it. But, you can't be sick of it. We're all humans. We all have physical and mental capabilities, and we all have differing degrees of health. physical and mental. So many of us are healthy, many of us are not. So, I mean, it's spend a minute and be thankful if you are mentally healthy and stable, and be cognizant of those periods when you may not be maintaining that, or you may be trending toward a unstable or an unhealthy mental state, or those around you. And the best thing that I've ever used or seen or know of is communication. And I know I'm a horrible communicator. I'm very, very aggressive and over talking. And I've had to try to learn to listen and pull that back. Tracy says, look, man, you're very dominant in your communication approach. You can't just lecture your way into whatever everybody needs. And I understand it, but it's hard to follow that prescription. And for someone that's in a fragile mental state or a diminishing mental state, that's not what's needed. They just need someone to listen, and then potentially someone to help guide them, give them assistance to the right people who can then hopefully impact changes with them, have them understand that those changes are needed and what those changes are, and then they become, back on the path of mental health, healthy mental health. So yeah, Ben, I wanted to bring that up. I wanted to talk on it briefly, and appreciate any feedback, comments, or thoughts on that.